Welcome back, everybody. We are doing another fun episode of Indie Reads Aloud. We are almost at our 250th episode, and I'm so excited. We're so close. So close. On today's episode, we have Yvette Walker here. She is a new to me author, so I'm really excited to hear her read. You guys know how much I love it when people read out loud to me. I am just a 6-year-old in recovery. So I love it when people read out loud. Today, Yvette is going to read from her novel 60, which is part of the Crime Reporter Story Chronicles and the Linda Radcliffe Chronicles. I'm sorry. And it is, as you might imagine, a crime novel. Welcome, Yvette. I'm so glad you're here with us today.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here.
This is so exciting. I love what Zoom has done for us because you are in Kansas City, Missouri, and I
hmm
am in Detroit, and we get to share story together. I think it's amazing.
Absolutely. No, it is great. And as much as we may have technical problems sometimes, we love
Yeah,
it.
we do. We do. Well, there's a little fatigue involved sometimes, but on the all, it's a great invention.
Yes.
So we were talking in the green room a little bit. You have a background in journalism. And you got to be an assistant dean of a university department at one point in your existence. How did you decide that the writing life was going to be yours? I mean, was this a passion you had since you were a kid, or was it something that came to you as you matured?
No, I think it was a passion I had since I was a little girl. I remember, and I was just telling someone this the other day. I remember when I was a little girl, I would draw newspapers on like a sheet of paper. Like I would draw the front page of a newspaper and I would write what the stories were and all of that. So I knew that that probably was going to be it for me. I did go to a journalism college and then became a reporter and did that for many, many years and went on to editing. As you said, I had a chance to go into academia for a few years and
Mhm.
teach the next generation of journalists, which
Right.
I love that. But now I'm back in full-time journalism in Kansas City.
That's super exciting. And you spent time here at the Detroit Jewish News, so that's a wonderful connection.
I spent time in Detroit, yes, but at the Detroit News. Yes,
At the
yes,
Detroit
yes.
News, right.
Uh-huh.
So, that's right. I was at the Jewish News. You know
Yes, you
what?
were.
We talk in the green room so much that sometimes I forget where I am in conversation because I think everybody else has already heard what we talked about in the green room. So,
hmm
apologies in listener land. You don't get to hear the green room. So sorry. But
It's fun too.
it is fun. We have a good time. So tell me a little bit about Linda Radcliffe. Who is
hmm
she?
So
And why did she get her own book series?
Linda Radcliffe is an editor. She's a former reporter, but she always probably thinks of herself as a reporter. Now, I have to say that I am not Linda. However, I was a crime reporter back in the day, the beginning of my career. And some of what Linda is going through, I take inspiration from real things that happened. There's a serial killer in well, there was a serial killer that kind of in the history of this book, and I did cover a serial killer. But Linda, Linda is a little bit like me. She's a flawed individual. She's passionate about her work. She loves to write, as do I. Um, but she's flawed. She's divorced, as I am. She's a Christian like me. Again, there's some elements here, but I just have to
Well,
say
you
I'm
know what
I'm
I
not Linda.
right. Well, what I've learned over the years is that as much as we try to avoid it, we
Yeah.
can't help but put a little piece of ourselves in everything we write.
Oh, absolutely.
And I
And
think that's a
because
good thing because it makes the pieces more human.
Yes, and because I've spent my entire career, except for the few years in academia, and even when I was in academia, I was teaching journalism. I mean, journalism really is important to me. It's been in my life the whole time, so I don't know how I could not write about it.
Sure. I definitely understand that. Um, so what is this story? Give us
hmm
kind of like a little preview of what you're going to read for us.
So Linda used to work in a small town in Oklahoma called Elmar, where she was a crime reporter. She covered a serial killing. It affected her. What a lot of people don't understand about journalists, especially crime journalists, is they have to write about terrible things, and sometimes they see terrible things. Well, it
Mm-hmm.
affected Linda, and she left. And she moved on to another newspaper. Here's the funny thing. She works in Kansas City now. This is before I moved to Kansas City. So so she's an editor. She's no longer writing. She's an editor in Kansas City, and she gets a phone call that takes her back. And this is what we're going to read today.
Okay, I'm super excited. This is going to be fun. And what I really love is that there's another book after this one.
Absolutely. And then there will be a third one.
And we'll talk about that at the end.
Uh-huh.
I'm really excited to hear you read. So today you're going to be reading 60, a crime reporter story, which is book one in the Linda Radcliffe Chronicles. So Yvette Walker, when you are ready, ma'am, please take the microphone and read aloud.
Back when she was a reporter covering crime, she felt like breaking a lot. That's one of the reasons she left to become an editor. It was hard talking to families about their sons and daughters, sometimes victims of terrible people. Sure, she still edited those stories today, but she wasn't as close to the tragedy. Linda checked her email account and sat back in her chair. She relaxed. Now she had a chance to reflect on the front page she had just supervised. It was possible to tweak things and make it better, but more important was getting any fresh stories into the paper. She never knew what to expect. From the news wires, always rolling, always updating, to the Metro desk reporters out looking for stories or waiting by the phones. They could come back with anything. But the nights they turned in late stories about a killing, a kidnapping, or a rape always unsettled her, even after 20 years in the news business. Still, Linda generally liked her job. She enjoyed the creation of something new. It was like giving birth to a new organism every night, with just as intense labor pains. She once told a friend, "It's amazing how many things can go wrong on the path to putting out a newspaper." Stories go from the mind and fingers of the reporter to his or her editor, and maybe even another editor, then to the news editor if it's a story being offered for the front page, and then to the copy desk. The copy desk scrutinizes every story that appears in the paper, anywhere in the paper. Then the night crew looks at proofs or printouts of each page. Only after all that does the paper go to the presses. And still, after those careful safeguards, some things still can get screwed up. When it happened, Linda got a headache and an upset stomach. It was called stress, and she knew she couldn't keep that pace up for the rest of her life. She had experienced it several times over her career. Big or small, a screw up cost you. The payout? Time, responsibility, and sometimes even self respect. Linda didn't like to relive some of her mistakes, but tonight, the memories came and haunted her. She tried to shake them off. She still had work to do. For now, her job was fun and exciting. Every night brought something different, and the news website that her company just launched was one more layer of work. News may happen during the day, but it's nighttime when the paper is formed. The clerk began distributing the early editions. She looked up. Was it 11:30 already? She took her copy and started scanning, looking for errors. In her head, she couldn't help but repeat that line from an old but popular commercial, "Time to make the donuts." Her eyes drifted to the phone. The voicemail light was flashing. She'd missed the call in the flurry of deadline activities. Linda picked up the receiver and pressed voicemail. The voice sounded older, but familiar. Is this Linda Radcliffe, the reporter who used to work at the Evening Chronicle in Elmar, Oklahoma? Linda put down the phone, exhaled, and sat back in her chair. No one had asked her about her work at the EC in years. She worked there right after college back in 1987 as a police reporter. Elmar was the murder capital of the United States among cities under 100,000 population. And she'd covered some gruesome stories back then. And as she began to remember, the voice became even more familiar. It took her back to the worst time of her life, the Mayfield Sherman murder case. Linda listened to the voicemail again. Her hand was shaking. Her mouth went dry. Is this Linda Radcliffe, the reporter who used to work at the Evening Chronicle in Elmar, Oklahoma? Linda, I know you won't remember me. My daughter, Sarah, was killed by Mayfield Sherman. Linda felt like someone kicked her in the gut. Mayfield Sherman, Lord help us, she thought. That contemptuous dog was put to death several years ago, but not before he tortured and killed several women and little girls across the Midwest. He made a stop in Oklahoma, right on Linda's beat. Terrible as it was, the murders were in line with Linda's days in Elmar, incredibly busy back in those days. She only stayed 1 year, overwhelmed by the city's high rates of poverty, welfare, and unemployment. But that wasn't the real reason. Mayfield Sherman was the reason. That story had ruined her. Covering the murders left her jagged and raw. The killings were horrifying, worse than a slasher flick, and she knew every detail, every element, because she had read the police files. She had seen the photos. But it was more than the crime that haunted her. It was her inability to deal with crime reporting. After covering murders in Elmar, she began to feel hardened, stoic even. She was blocking out the horror, which is what a police reporter does to some degree. Don't let it get to you, her editor said. She'd taken their advice, perhaps a little too much. Sometimes even her faith wasn't enough to give her solace, so she packed it all away inside her mind. Until Mayfield Sherman. Her thoughts came back to the telephone, and try as she might, she couldn't convince herself to delete the message. She knew she would have to call back tomorrow. Enough of that, she thought. The night was getting long, and the second edition was done. It was nearly time to go home. She would need a good night's sleep. The sun tried to peek through Linda's blackout blinds. They never really worked 100%, but usually helped her stay asleep until mid-morning. She rose early this day, however, hours earlier than her normal 10 a.m. alarm because she couldn't shake that call. She picked up the flip phone resting on the charger at her bedside and dialed the number Mrs. Buckner had left. It was the same number from all those years ago, the same number she'd called dozens of times while reporting the story. She took a deep breath and exhaled. Linda suddenly realized the woman had never left town, never left Serenity Lane. The phone started ringing. Hello, Mrs. Buckner. This is Linda Radcliffe, and yes, I do remember you, she said, her voice shaking. How did you find me? It's been 20 years. How did you even know I was still a journalist? I always knew you'd stay in journalism. I always knew you'd keep writing, Mrs. Buckner said, urgency in her voice. Linda felt shame burning in her cheeks. She hadn't kept writing. When she left Elmar, she left reporting and became an editor, helping other young reporters polish their stories. Mrs. Buckner continued, I called the Chronicle and asked if anyone knew where you were. The nice young man was kind enough to tell me where you worked. I hope that's okay. Okay, Linda thought. Creepy was more like it. She wasn't sure she wanted anyone to be able to track her down that easily. How did the Chronicle know where she was anyway? She doubted they had a clerk whose job it was to keep track of Chronicle alumni. The internet was growing stronger and stronger, she thought. I hope you're not angry, but I told them it was important, Mrs. Buckner said. Oh, no, that's fine, Linda said. I was just a little surprised, that's all. Linda remembered the day the first Sherman story came across her desk. 2 little girls were missing, and police suspected Sherman, who was sought for several disappearances during the month of May. The girls, 9 and 10, were best friends and had been playing hide and seek outside school. It was 1987, and the times were somewhat simpler then. When they didn't come home for dinner, their mothers called the police. Sherman was a specter over Elmar, a ghost who haunted the city's girls until he fled east to Detroit. But police soon discovered he'd taken one of the precious ones. Sarah Buckner was missing. That was a long time ago. Why was Mrs. Buckner looking for Linda? The murders were 20 years ago. Sherman had been caught and executed. It's wonderful to hear from you, Mrs. Buckner, but why are you calling? Linda, well, I was just thinking about you, and I wondered what had happened to you after all this time. Linda guiltily realized she hadn't even thought about the Buckner family since she left Elmar the year after the killings. Wow, has it been 20 years? So much time, so much had happened. Beverly Buckner must have been at least 70 by now. Maybe she's senile, Linda thought, but her voice sounded strong, not the voice of a frail old lady. She had the sense to know how to track Linda down anyway. That's very kind of you, Linda said. It was such a long time ago, wasn't it? How have you been? How is the rest of the family? Oh, I'm doing well for an old lady, she chuckled, and Linda remembered her salty sense of humor, even in the midst of all that madness. But I was cleaning and pulled down some albums, and I found some of your articles about, well, about that time. Linda shivered. You know, I kept everything from that summer. I'm an old pack rat anyway, she said. Linda remembered that too, the tidy but full house that she kept. Lots of magazines, clippings, files, books, in neat piles, but lots of them. What Linda's mother would call organized clutter. Anyway, Mrs. Buckner said, the family is celebrating the 20th anniversary of the loss of my baby. Even then, she rarely said the name Sarah, as if the name burned her tongue. It was always my baby. And I was going through things and I remembered you, Linda. Would you come? It seems right that you be here because you were here at the beginning. Mrs. Buckner, Linda whispered, the words barely surfacing. It would be an honor, but I'm not sure. When is it? Well, I know it's really short notice, but it's Saturday after next. Please, will you come? Beads of perspiration appeared on Linda's forehead. She wiped away the sweat and took a breath. I really can't promise you now. I'll have to check my work calendar and see if I can get away, said Linda, closing her eyes. She smiled silently and then asked for the address. She didn't need to, really. She could drive to that house blindfolded if she knew it so well. I promise I'll let you know as soon as I figure something out. Thanks so much for calling, Linda said politely. Goodbye. Linda was numb. The call out of the blue woke up too many things, things she needed to forget. She needed to stop the rush of memory, of emotion. It was too much. She needed to replace that rush with a different kind of rush. She needed some joy. I'm going to jump ahead because I would like you guys to know what she decides.
Yes, please. Don't leave us hanging.
Okay, I am going to do this. I'm going to do this.
Excellent.
Um, all right. I'm so sorry. I should have had that part of it.
That's fine. We have time.
Okay, very good. All right. Okay. In Elmar, she learned to become resilient on frozen streets and back alleys and in nice living rooms, talking to sorrowful mothers and fathers. She learned how to find her way in the country when an editor had given her lousy directions way before GPS was commonly used. She learned to be an independent woman in Elmar, and now the mother of a dead daughter was trying to replace those good memories with bad ones. She didn't mean to, but there it was. Linda didn't want to go back to Elmar. There was no danger. Sherman was long dead, executed by the state of Oklahoma in 1995. Linda hadn't gone to the execution, but she had read the stories. Mrs. Buckner did go. She witnessed the man who killed her baby go down. And now she wanted Linda to relive the tragedy? Well, she wouldn't. She would just call her back and politely tell her no thank you. She would not return to 1987 and wallow in all that. She picked up the phone and dialed the 580 area code. She hung up before it rang. I think I am going to leave you hanging on that.
First.
I think I am. But as you maybe can imagine, she goes back to Elmar.
Well, okay, so she would kind of have to because otherwise, the rest of the book. But I'm okay. Journalists know how to dangle a lead, so there you go. Nicely done. It's a really great segment. Thank you for sharing it with us. What was the hardest part? Let me back up a second because our listening audience wasn't in the green room, and part of what we talked about in the green room is that you also write devotional works as well,
I do.
inspirational pieces. So, what was the hardest part about that transition to go from writing devotional work to the crime work?
So the hardest part was wondering if people what people would think about me. And as writers, we shouldn't care, right?
No.
So
Yeah. I mean, in a
as
utopian world,
yeah, I know.
yeah,
As as an inspirational writer and as a Christian, as a woman who has deep faith, um, I also like crime novels and I like horror movies. And I think you can do both.
sure,
So when I decided to tell this story, I still wanted Linda to have, levels. And she is a woman of faith, and she does go to church, and she's divorced and she feels bad about that, and she thinks she weighs too much, and you know all those things that a lot of
sure,
multifaceted women have. And so I wanted to show that she's got different layers, and you can be a person of faith and witness these terrible things that she had to witness and do that job, which again I have some experience with. Um,
sure.
but I would say, it took me a while. And as I told you before, I thought maybe I would have to write under a pen name. Maybe I could not write um, for example, my devotional book, Whispering in His Ear, um, under this name, and then have this crime number under the same name. Maybe I couldn't do that. But and I actually started. I had a cover design. It had the name Ursula Marcher on there. Ursula Mar
Ooh,
which is a great name. Ursula
it
Marcher
is a great name.
is my confirmation name because I
Okay,
was raised Catholic, and Marcher. So my last name is Walker, and Marche is to walk.
nice. I like it.
So
Yeah.
so that was going
But
to
you
be
know
it.
what? I'm really glad that you didn't go schizophrenic on it. I'm
Yeah.
glad that you stayed you and chose to use your own name.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Ursula may have a book in her somewhere, but I just decided I'm not going to do it, and people are going to think what they're going to think. And but because of my faith is important to me, it's going to make its way into any book that I do. So one thing I told you about
Absolutely.
before was I actually have a book I'm writing about that has a zombie apocalypse in it, and there also is some faith in there. So there's going to be faith in really any book that I write.
Sure. Oh, and that makes perfect sense, right? As we spoke in the green room, we talked about that thing that we always write a piece of ourselves into everything we write, because it's the natural thing to do and because it lends our work humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Absolutely.
think that that's an important thing. We don't want robots writing our books for us.
No, we do not.
Yeah,
Certainly not.
we want to connect to one another as human beings and understand each other on that more intimate level. So I think it's a natural thing that we would put a piece of ourselves in our work.
I think so. And while this is so when I chose categories for this, I call this a thriller, suspense. However, there are romantic elements in it.
Mhm.
She goes back to Elmar, as of course we all know she's going to do, and she meets an old flame. Um, they're both divorced. I only mentioned the divorce because divorce is actually an area of inspiration work that I am doing now
Okay,
in my ministry, Positively Joy Ministries. I have a podcast called Positively Joy, Healing Hearts After Divorce. And so that is, at some point, maybe not in this three-part series, but Linda will continue, and I'll probably deal more with her divorce perhaps in another
sure.
book.
Well,
Yeah.
that it's definitely a theme that many of us, myself included, can relate to. And,
Mm-hmm.
we've had that experience. We all experience it differently, but it's certainly, I think, a realistic theme to write into work.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, kudos to you for, taking themes from both books and pulling them together. I think that's an awesome idea.
Well, I hope it works, and I hope people appreciate it.
Absolutely. We just have a little bit of time left. Tell us real quick about book two in the series.
So book two is called Trial of the Heart, and try not to give too much away, but she goes to Elmar. Um, this serial killer is dead, but there are additional killings happening in town.
Okay.
So I'm not going to say it's a copycat, but there is some relation to the
Some
first set of,
connection.
there's some connection, that's all I'll say.
Right.
But there's I like to write cliffhangers at the end of my books, and maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's not, because you do have to wait a bit to get the
Yeah.
next book. But there is a cliffhanger at the end of 60, that she has to make two big decisions, to help this old flame that she's reconnected with, and to decide if she's going to go back to Kansas City or stay in Elmar, to not only help him but to do some other things.
And so
And
book
so
two is a
so book 2 is a
continuation of that
continuation.
story. Okay.
Exactly. She makes those
Right.
decisions, continuation, and then there's another big decision she has to make at the end of book 2, which will take us into book 3.
Of course it will, because that's how series works.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you came on the program, Yvette. Thank you so much for sharing your work with us. And I hope that you will come back and read from book 2 for us.
I would love to. Thank you so much.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll connect again soon.